They have sold you a story about Gen Z, a small, incomplete story. A story that keeps them underestimated, mocked, and dismissed before they even begin. They told you they're addicted to screens, that they can't focus, that they are soft, fragile, and allergic to hard work. And you believed it. You believed it because it was easy to believe. Because it fit the picture they painted, the picture they wanted you to see. But here's what they didn't tell you. Gen Z has grown up in a collapsing world. They were born into crisis. They inherited broken systems, poison politics, and a planet on fire. And instead of waiting for permission, they started building something new. What you think is laziness is rejection of outdated rules. What you think is distraction is the ability to process more information faster than any generation before them. What you call soft is actually unshakable empathy. This is not the weakest generation. This might be the last, best chance we have. They didn't get a clean slate. They didn't get the quiet, golden childhoods the history books like to pretend existed. Gen Z opened their eyes in a world already unraveling. They learned to walk while headlines screamed of terror attacks. They started school while the economy cracked in half. They grew up in the shadow of climate reports that read more like countdown clocks. By the time they were teenagers, they had already seen more chaos than some generations saw in a lifetime. Financial collapse, mass shootings, fires and floods and hurricanes that erased entire towns. And all of it was live-streamed, in real time, unfiltered. This constant exposure didn't break them, it forged them. While others grew up in protected bubbles, Gen Z learned early that the world could turn upside down overnight. They watched leaders fail to act, systems fail to change, and promises fail to materialize. So they stopped waiting for those in charge to fix it. They started building workarounds. When the climate crisis worsened, they didn't just complain, they organized global strikes. When racial injustice boiled over, they mobilized millions in the streets. When outdated industries refused to adapt, they found ways to earn money outside of them: coding, freelancing, trading, creating. Every generation inherits the problems of the one before, but this one, they inherited a storm, and instead of seeking shelter, they learned to navigate in the rain. And here's the part no one likes to admit: most of the criticism at Gen Z is just projection. Older generations see in them the courage they wish they had when they were young, the refusal to play by broken rules, the demand for more than survival. Gen Z didn't get to believe in a perfect world before reality hit. They were handed the world as it is, cracked, complicated, on the brink. And somehow, they're still willing to fight for it. Every generation had its tools: the printing press, the radio, television, but none compared to the weapon Gen Z was born holding. The smartphone, for most, it's just a piece of glass and metal. For Gen Z, it's a portal. They didn't migrate to the internet like their parents did. They were raised inside it. They learned to speak, to share, to think, in networks. They don't go online, they live online, and that changes everything. They know how to gather millions without stepping into a single building. They can make an idea spread across continents in hours. They can build a movement from a bedroom floor. Their protests don't just fill streets, they flood timelines, they hijack algorithms, they force stories into the spotlight. Older generations still see the internet as a distraction. For Gen Z, it's infrastructure. A place to work, a place to learn, a place to mobilize. They don't wait for gatekeepers to approve their voices. No publisher, no TV network, no government official stands between them and the world. If they have something to say, they can say it now, to everyone, instantly. And this power is not without cost. They are more exposed, more vulnerable. more subject to the weight of the world than anyone before. Every crisis is their crisis, every injustice is in their feed. But here's the twist, that constant pressure. It doesn't make them retreat. It makes them faster, sharper, more adaptable. When governments hide the truth, they dig for it. When media spins the story, they unravel it. When the world ignores a voice, they amplify it until it can't be ignored. This is why they seem so different. This is why older generations misunderstand them. Gen Z doesn't just consume the internet, they weaponize it. They know the architecture of attention, and they can bend it. And maybe that's why the system fears them. Because in a world built on control, nothing is more dangerous than a generation that can bypass it. Gen Z is often called selfish, detached, obsessed with selfies. That's the easy story, but beneath the surface lies something deeper. They grew up watching division, racism, inequality, climate destruction, a world fractured by fear and hate, and they refused to accept it as normal. Empathy became their rebellion. Understanding became their weapon. Diversity wasn't just tolerated, it was celebrated. For Gen Z, identity is not a box to check, but a spectrum to explore. Gender, race, culture. These are not barriers, but bridges. They demand to be seen as they are, and they demand to see others as they are. This generation questions the status quo, not just with slogans, but with choices. They buy from brands that align with their values. They support creators who speak truth, even when it's uncomfortable. They push institutions to be accountable or face rejection. Mental health is no longer a taboo. It's a conversation, a priority, a movement. This openness to vulnerability and authenticity rewires how society talks about success. No longer is it just wealth or status. Now, well-being, purpose, and connection count. And this shift is happening quietly, beneath the noise. While headlines focus on chaos, Gen Z builds new norms. They challenge old prejudices, not with anger, but with insistence on respect. They redefine what it means to be strong, not by dominance, but by compassion. This isn't a generation waiting to be saved. It's a generation already saving itself. Most generations dream about the future. Gen Z builds it. They don't wait for permission. They don't wait for perfect conditions, they act. From startups redefining industries to activists demanding change, they move with urgency. Because for them, time isn't a luxury, it's a deadline. They see a world on fire and know waiting means losing. So they innovate, they invent, they disrupt. Technology is their playground, but their ambitions reach far beyond gadgets and apps. They want justice. They want equality. They want a planet that can breathe. In classrooms, they challenge outdated lessons. In offices, they refuse old hierarchies. In politics, they demand accountability, transparency, and real change. And they do this with a fierce hope, not naive, but relentless. They believe the future is theirs to shape, even if the pieces are broken. Older generations often see this as impatience or rebellion, but it's something else entirely. It's a refusal to accept a future handed down without effort. A refusal to inherit a world destroyed by neglect. A refusal to be spectators. They build communities online and offline, networks of support and action. They turn protests into policy, ideas into movements, voices into power. This generation is rewriting the rules, not with words alone, but with action. And if you think this is just youth idealism, think again. Because history doesn't remember those who waited, it remembers those who dared. So here's the truth, no one dares say out loud, Gen Z isn't just the best generation because of what they do today. They might be the last chance. The planet is burning faster than expected. Systems are crumbling, The old ways have failed. And now, all eyes turn to them. But the question isn't if they will save the world. The real question is, will the world be ready to change? Because fighting the future means more than courage. It means breaking every rule you've ever been taught. It means tearing down the walls built by fear and habit. And when the moment comes to choose, will Gen Z rise? Or will the weight of everything break them? The answer is still unwritten. And that's where the story truly begins.